On my previous video, long-time viewer Smitcher posted this comment, in which he requested a video on the song Panic by the Smiths, suggesting that it had actually been written about notorious media personality Jimmy Savile. Now, I hadn't heard about this before his comment, but I was immediately intrigued. For international viewers who might not know, this is Jimmy Savile. Throughout his life, he was a popular TV personality and DJ who raised millions for charity and was thought of as a quirky and eccentric national treasure. After his death in 2011, however, many allegations which had been repressed by the BBC came to light. This resulted in a massive police operation known as Operation U-Tree, which uncovered what they described as a staggering number of sexual abuse victims, with the NSPCC Children's Charity describing Savile as one of the most prolific sex offenders it had ever come across. Savile apparently used his charity work to gain access to NHS hospitals, which were just one of many locations in which he would apparently use his power and influence to abuse victims of all ages. This included disabled people and the dead, but children in particular. Now, I am going to leave it there on the Savile backstory. If you want to know more, there's plenty of information out there, but I'm not going to go any deeper because, frankly, it's just really horrible. But with that brief introduction out of the way and in mind, let's have a look at the lyrics to Panic. Panic on the streets of London, panic on the streets of Birmingham. I wondered to myself, could life ever be sane again? The Leeds side streets that you slip down, I wonder to myself. Hopes may rise on the Grasmere, but honey pie, you're not safe here, so you run down to the safety of the town. But there's panic on the streets of Carlisle, Dublin, Dundee, Humberside. I wondered to myself, burn down the disco, hang the blessed DJ, because the music that they constantly play, it says nothing to me about my life. On the Leeds side streets that you slip down, the provincial towns that you jog round, hang the DJ, hang the DJ, hang the DJ. And as the band repeat the line hang the DJ over and over and over for the outro, literally a children's choir from a local school join in repeating that line. So let's start off by asking, what have the band themselves said about the actual meaning of these lyrics? Simon Goddard, author of Songs That Saved Your Life, reports this. The song's fabled genesis has it that on the 26th of April 1986, just over a week before entering the studio, Morrissey was in Johnny Marr's home kitchen, listening to daytime BBC Radio 1. After a news report announcing the nuclear disaster at the Chernobyl plant, DJ Steve Wright recommenced his programme by playing Wham's current single, I'm Your Man. Johnny Marr says, I remember actually saying, what the fuck has this got to do with people's lives? We hear about Chernobyl, and then seconds later, we're expected to be jumping around to I'm Your Man. So that is the story that's persisted for years as to what this song is about. The idea that it's just been announced on the radio that the nation is under threat from a nuclear fallout, and the radio DJ is playing goofy pop music right afterwards in a way that is incongruous to the point of being infuriating. And on the surface at least, that does kind of make sense. However, Smiths author Tony Fletcher throws a little doubt onto this story about a Wham song by pointing out in his book the track had actually been released the previous year, and by the time of the Chernobyl accident had been out of the charts for months. He also pointed out that many Smiths fans realised this was actually about an unnamed crisis developing up and down the country. Now, it is worth remembering that while Johnny Marr related that story, it was apparently actually Morrissey who went away and wrote the lyrics. And to my knowledge at least, he only ever gave one interview in which he discussed the song at the time. It was a notoriously controversial one, but one in which he made no mention of Chernobyl or the Wham single. Let's have a brief look at that interview from Melody Maker in September 1986, around 2 months after the release of Panic. Pop has never been this divided, wrote Simon Reynolds, referring to the chasm that now exists between indie pop and black pop. Morrissey has further widened this divide with the recent single Panic, their most explicit denunciation yet of black pop. Hang the DJ, urges Morrissey. So, is the music of the Smiths and their ilk racist? Morrissey says, ultimately I don't have very cast iron opinions on black music other than black modern music, which I detest. I detest Stevie Wonder, I think Diana Ross is awful, I hate all those records in the top 40, Janet Jackson, Whitney Houston, I think they're vile in the extreme. In essence, this music doesn't say anything whatsoever. He then goes on to say, obviously, to get onto top of the pops these days, one has to be, by law, black. I think something political has occurred, and there's been a hefty pushing of all these black artists and all this disco nonsense into the top 40. I think, as a result, that very aware younger groups that speak for now are being gagged. The journalist says, you seem to be saying that you believe there is some sort of black pop conspiracy being organised to keep white indie groups down. Morrissey replies, yes, I really do. Isn't it curious that practically none of these records reflect life as we live it? If you compare the exposure that records by the likes of Janet Jackson and the stream of other anonymous Jacksons get to the level of daily airplay that the Smiths receive, the Smiths have had at least 10 consecutive chart hits and we still can't get on Radio 1's A-list. Is that not a conspiracy? The last LP ended up at number 2 and we were still told by radio that nobody wanted to listen to the Smiths in the daytime. Is that not a conspiracy? I do get the scent of a conspiracy. This interview was published and allegations of racism followed everywhere. Guitarist Johnny Marr, however, reacted angrily to the allegations and denied them, implying that the article had actually been a hit job by the journalist. Marr made the point that firstly, disco is made by people of all skin colours and races. Disliking a musical style is not disliking any one race. And secondly, threatening that if the Smiths ever crossed that journalist's path again, they would kick the shit out of him. So, what have we actually learned so far about the meaning of panic? Not a lot, really. The limited interviews that the band gave only ever seemed to focus on explaining one single line. The music that they constantly play says nothing to me about my life. It seems, to me at least, that they never explained anything from the rest of the song. What about panic on the streets of London? What about someone slipping away down the side streets of Leeds? Who was trying to find safety on the Grasmere Lake but failing? Who was meant to be jogging around provincial English towns? Can these lines really be talking about black American disco artists? Surely not. The majority of what he said in that interview doesn't connect to the majority of the lyrics. One thing really did leap out at me, however, when I was reading that controversial interview, and that was that Morrissey vehemently seemed to believe that there was a conspiracy at the BBC. And when he said that, it was a rare moment when he was talking about the inspiration for the song Panic. Which brings us back around to the original question. Could this song have been written about Jimmy Savile? While Savile's notoriety behind the scenes was well known, the question has to be asked, did him and the Smiths ever cross paths? Smitcher, who requested this video, mentioned that both the Smiths and Savile had been on the BBC show Top of the Pops at different times. So I decided to check if, at any point, they had been on at the same time previous to the release of Panic. And it turns out they were. On August the 30th, 1984, the Smiths performed William It Was Really Nothing on the same episode in which Jimmy Savile appeared on a sponsored train journey for charity.
Jim, how was the journey, first of all?
The journey was spectacular. It was great fun, and as you can see... Hello, there we are. A more spectacular journey. I've never had a journey like it in my life. The train is full of my lovely handicapped children and their helpers.
Now it seems that Jimmy Savile's clip and the Smiths' performance were filmed in different locations. One in the studio, one at a train station, but they were on the same programme and the dates line up. Was there an after party where they all got together and something happened? No idea, but it's possible. This crossing of paths occurred under 2 years before the song Panic was released, so there was plenty of time for Savile to have been the inspiration. But if it was written about Savile, why didn't the Smiths just come out and say so? As I've already mentioned, Jimmy Savile's behaviour was well known at the BBC, but was constantly swept under the rug and hidden, to the extent that anyone who did try to out him was risking their careers. Johnny Rotten, for example, spoke up about Savile in an interview in 1978.
I'd like to kill Jimmy Savile. I think he's a hypocrite. I bet he's into all kinds of seediness that we all know about but are not allowed to talk about. I know some rumours.
And of course, it was blocked and censored by the BBC. Comedian Jerry Sadowitz outed Savile as a paedophile in 1987. He was subsequently blacklisted. So presumably the Smiths knew that any attempt to do the same would result in similar treatment. Next, of course, we might ask, if this song really is written about Jimmy Savile, why didn't the Smiths come out and say so once he had been unmasked? The only person who really knows the truth about these lyrics is Morrissey, and Morrissey despises the press, who he believes have constantly framed him and stitched him up, misrepresented him and misquoted him in the pursuit of selling copy. So he very rarely gives interviews anymore. Until Morrissey himself speaks up and says, yes, it's about Jimmy Savile, we will never know 100% for sure. But in the meantime, we can look at the lyrics themselves and draw our own conclusions. In the first two verses we see these places referenced. Panic on the streets of London, panic on the streets of Birmingham, there's panic on the streets of Carlisle, Dublin, Dundee, Humberside. While I don't think this is necessarily a literal list of places he abused in, it is amazing to see the map showing where victims came forward nationwide and to read the data that shows his abuse really was up and down the entire UK and in many of these specific locations. The only one of these cities where it's a bit foggy is Dublin, but Savile was there a lot nonetheless, doing huge charity marathons. So it's entirely possible that Dublin wasn't safe either. And while we're talking about marathons, bear in mind Jimmy Savile was from Leeds, and take a look at these lyrics. On the Leeds side streets that you slip down, provincial towns you jog round, hang the DJ. Now Jimmy Savile committed a ton of abuse in Leeds. The Jimmy Savile Charitable Trust was set up there in 1984. The Panic music video is really interesting as well. It's the band performing the song intercut with repeated overlaid black and white images of groping hands reaching down side street alleyways. Burn down the disco, hang the blessed DJ, because the music that they constantly play, it says nothing to me about my life. Jimmy Savile could have been the blessed DJ who deserved hanging. He was revered and protected in all kinds of ways by the powers that be. Any allegations that came out while he was alive were blocked amid claims of not enough evidence from the police. Allegations later came out that Savile had been bribing them. Hence, after his death, there was enough evidence. Abracadabra. I'll be honest, I wasn't even aware of this interpretation before Smitcher left that comment, but now I've researched it a little bit. Honestly, it really could be true. Of course, I can't say 100% either way, but blimey, it doesn't half seem to line up well. Did the Smiths write Panic about Jimmy Savile? What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.